Ready for a cool project? This has some legs to be a Christmas gift. I'll zoom in on this on a second so you can see what I'm talking about. We're going to make a box, and there are a couple neat things about this. Took a little thinking to pull this off. The whole box is made out of one piece of wood, and I'll show you the benefit of that. And everything is done on the table saw. Now, sanders are involved and that kind of stuff, but the heavy lifting is all done on the table saw. So let me zoom you in, and then we'll talk about where this whole thing is going. But you should see this thing. So let's have a look here. All right, there's our box. And the way this box opens is, go gadget open. The lid just pivots back on a single screw that's in that corner. The all one piece thing, the payoff to that is when the box is closed, the grain lines up all the way around, because this was all cut from one block of wood, just like this chunk right here. Let's talk it through. This is not a difficult project, but it's a procedural project. So one thing that's important to remember is, obviously we're doing this live right now, and I don't know, are you watching it live? Are you watching it later? I don't know. But these are always archived. So you can always come back and watch it again. You can always come back and refer to it. And on this project, I'm making a point of pointing that out, because there's a sequence of events. There's a sequence in which you need to do this. And you're going to probably want to come back and look at the video again just to make sure you're getting the sequence right. The material from which we make it is not critical. Speaking of material from which we make it, one of the things that I'm very proud of this PDF that we produced that Gary Coyne wrote for us. It's all about understanding wood and wood species. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a link for it there. It is a very comprehensive guide to wood. So part of that is identifying species and what their characteristics are. Part of that is storing lumber. Part of that is grading. What is selecting better compared to FNS, first and seconds, means. So there's a boatload of information there. So you're going to want to look at that PDF as well. But back to this. Material doesn't matter. I've got 4 boxes in process here. The first one I showed you is maple, curly maple. This one is a soft maple. So hardwood is probably a better choice than softwood for this, but not critical. We do want to have a chunk that's got some thickness to it. This is a little over 2 inches thick. And what's going to happen is we're going to, on the table saw, cut off the lid and cut off the bottom. So if you start with something narrow, thin, you're not going to have much of a box left inside. The dimensions of this piece are 5 by 8. That's a pretty good dimension for this. What we're going to do, so you know where this is going, and that's part of the dimensioning, is we're going to send this through the table saw this way in order to cut off the top and the bottom. The height capacity on most table saws is 3 inches. So we're going to cut, flip, cut, 2 passes. So we need this width to be less than 6, so that when we stand this on edge like this, we can make those cuts. So if you're going to change the dimensions, check the height capacity on your table saw first, so that you don't exceed in double cutting what the table saw is capable of doing. Okay. Sequence of events. If you've ever made a bandsaw box, this is very similar. We need to cut parts off to then expose the core of this thing. And once we've exposed the core, we can do the internal cuts that are going to turn this from a block of wood into a box. Before you start, grab a pencil and mark outside. I did 1 line on the end grain. Edge, I'm going to do 2. 1, 2. End, 1, 2, 3. Edge, 1, 2, 3, 6. Having those marks on there now is going to make it easier to get these back in the right configuration when we glue it back together. Again, part of our goal is we want grain to match. So if we don't put it back in this pattern, then there's no way that we're going to have grain match. We've got the opportunity for you to ask questions. And now looking at my monitor, I see my camera's a little crooked. So I'll fix that in a second. I'm going to do a little bit of work. And then if you're putting questions up now, I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to look at my other laptop in a second and get to those questions. I'm going to zoom you in. Where we're going is we have to cut the top and the bottom off first. Don't try to do it all in one pass. In other words, this is 5 inches. Don't set the blade for 2.5 and expect to do a 2.5 inch high cut, a 2.5 inch high cut. It's better to sneak up on it. So we'll do a number of passes where do a cut, raise the blade, do a cut, raise the blade, do a cut, raise the blade until we're all the way through. Let me get you in closer for that. No. Blade selection is a good thing to talk about. That is a 40-tooth alternate top bevel blade. Pretty specific choice for what we're doing here because it provides a good surface finish. And we're gonna have to do some sanding, but we want to minimize the amount of sanding that we do. Because we're not doing a through cut, I can't have the guard on here, but you should have your riving knife on. Anytime that the guard and the full-blown splitter are not on your saw, you should have the riving knife in place. So that's not a bad starting point for our height. I'm going to set my fence to 3/8. That's the thickness of our top and bottom. And then what's going to happen is here, same thing the other way. We're using the same dimension for the top and the bottom. Then I'll raise the blade a little bit, rinse and repeat over and over and over until they come off. Here we go. What we're doing is we're using the table saw to resaw. Now we have the core of the box. Staying at the table saw. Now we can lower the blade. Remember, safe cuts on the table saw means bottom of the gullet, even with the top of your wood. Now set the fence for 3/4. So a little memory device there. This was 3/8. This cut is twice as much, 3/4. We're cutting the sides first. cut the end. The core we don't need. You can get rid of that. Now what we've got is our box. So I'm looking for my marks outside, 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 outside. Before we put this back together, which is what's going to happen next, we need to do a little sanding. It's going to be really hard to get to those inside faces after this whole thing is assembled. When you sand this, do not go grab your random orbit sander and sand on these. There's too much chance you're going to round that surface. So very, very simple. Grab sandpaper, lay it on your table saw because your table saw is dead flat. And use this flat surface as a registration. Pencil marks up. And I'm just going to go fast here. I would do more sanding than this. So you don't need to sit there and watch me sand. Something like that, until those are lovely on the inside face. Then we're ready to put this together. I'm going to shift your position. And then I'll see if we have any preguntas yet. Let me do this. Okay. Okay. No questions yet. One thing I screwed up on is one of the things you want to do before you do the cuts where we define the internal part of the box is I should have, imagine this was the blank we were going to cut our parts from. I should have put lines across to make it easier now. When I put these back together, does this corner go with this corner? And now I'm going to have to look at the grain to match those up. Had I put a little hash mark on there, again, a 1, 2, 3, 4, those hash marks would show me how to put this back together. But in my haste, I forgot to do that. So mark the outside like we did, that part's right. But then also mark this face before you do the rips and cross cuts so that you know how this goes. So let me figure out my parts. Outside, 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 outside. And we got one of those. Yeah, they're pretty easy on this particular piece to see where the grain match is. So not hard. All right, I'll get you back in. For gluing, we got some glue, we got clamps, and a glue brush. Open that up. I've got wax paper down on my bench because glue won't stick to wax paper. And when I put these together, I want to be able to register the faces off of a flat surface. So I'm very intentionally going to be pushing this down against the bench. And if I didn't have the wax paper there, one, I'd be getting glue all over my bench. And two, if I left it sit in that spot, I'd maybe glue the box to the bench, which I'd rather not do. Doesn't take a lot to pull this together. So one hand clamps, quick clamps, provide plenty of squeeze. And again, I'm pushing to get this all registered in plane. Line them up. I'm just fussing a little bit with these ends to make sure they're aligned. There we go. That's better. Now, let glue dry. Or make parts ahead of time. What do you know? Here's a frame where the glue is already dry. Now, just in case the alignment on this didn't go smurferifically, what you need to do next is go back to your table saw with your sandpaper, and I don't want to mess with this on here because this bench isn't as flat as my table saw. But with that sandpaper, again, I'm going to same thing with, there's the top and the bottom that I cut off. Don't take your random orbit sander to this either. Do this. Because we want to make sure that that surface where it's going to mate to the box stays dead flat. So there's a core ready to go. Get that sanded so it's dead flat, everything is aligned. And then we have a top and a bottom that go with that. Now, because we took out 2 saw curves, these parts are too much big. So table saw, and again, this is where when we started, I said, this isn't a hard project, but it's a procedural project, sequence of events. Next sequence in the events, next event in the sequence, I guess, is use the core to set the fence. So right there, that'll slip in. We can lower the height of the blade because we're cutting thin stuff. Now, if you're thinking about what's about to happen here, I'm going to lose a little of my grain alignment because I'm cutting material off of one edge, but that's just the nature of the beast. There's nothing that we can do about that. We have to cut the bottom and the top to this size. The length is going to be fine because we didn't take anything off the length of our core box pieces. Now, back over here. And there's a little bit of a rinse and repeat now, which is, in this case, I just need the wax paper so I don't drip on my bench. But now you want to look and see which edge this piece goes on. So I'm checking my alignment to make sure I'm corresponding this to the correct, or I'm putting this on the corresponding face. Which those marks, remember the hash marks we made when we started? I had it right the first time. Those hash marks will tell you how this goes back on. I'm very intentionally keeping the glue toward the outside edge. If there's squeeze out that comes on that inside corner, I can deal with it, but I'd rather not have that squeeze out. So, and there's plenty of glue surface if I'm out here. So I'm staying about 1/4 to 3/8 away from the inside edge. That's plenty of glue surface for this project. Okay, these are gonna go together like this. And spring clamps are fine. Again, we're not asking much of this. It's gonna close up easily. Get alignment, I'm checking the edges, checking the end. Move it a little bit. Down, but there are more. Now we're back to watching glue dry again. Let that glue dry. And again, through the magic of me getting ready ahead of time, we have this. And that it's a beautiful piece of soft maple. The light is washing it out just a little bit. But when that's sanded and has finish on it, that's going to be pretty spectacular. So what happened so far, we cut the core, we glued together the core, glued on the bottom. The bottom and the top have been cut so that they match the width of this. Now what we're ready to do is create the pivot point so that I can do that. What I'm going to do for that is mark a hole right on this corner, 3/8 in and 3/8 in. 3/8 because that's half the thickness of our sides. So that's going to center me right there. When you drill this, you can do this a couple different ways. What I'm doing is I'm getting alignment on this edge. I got to double check here and make sure alignment on this edge. I almost put that in the wrong spot. Good thing I checked. There's where my line is. So I'm getting alignment on the edge adjacent to where I'm drilling the hole. Then the screw is going to go in there is that screw. So the first hole I'm drilling through the lid and into the base is the correct diameter for the threaded part of the screw. So holding flashicity, get on that center point, drill into the bottom. Now, only here in the lid, we need a bigger hole so that this has the opportunity to pivot. Change drill bits. And your check on this is that screw should just fall in there. I'm using a 3/4 inch long brass flathead screw. So at this point, the screw should easily just wiggle in and out. Last step, countersink. And that'll let the screw go, where am I? Right there, below the surface. Now, give that just enough tension that that can open, it can pivot, but it's not sloppy. And what's important about getting the diameter through the lid correct is if that diameter is too close to the size of the screw, the shank of the screw, when you spin this, it'll turn the screw and it's possible for it to come unscrewed. So we want this to move independently of that screw. What you'll find at this point is what I have here, which is the edges are just a little bit irregular. You can see there where, you know, there's some glue squeeze out, and you can see, I don't know, a little fingernail catch right there where the parts aren't quite aligned. So next step is just sanding. Take this to a sander, sand all of these surfaces so that you get them flush, and then you're going to be ready for a coat of finish. And again, look, man, what an amazing piece of soft maple that is. That curl right there is going to be incredible when I get a coat of finish on that. What do you think? A couple good points. One is, if you don't have in your hot little hands a piece of 2-inch plus thick material, if you have 3/4 inch material, you could have 2-inch material. So 3 layers of 3/4 is 2 1/4. So there's nothing wrong. I had enough solid wood here in thick chunks to make it out of a solid piece, but you could also glue pieces together face to face to give you the thickness you want. Now think about the possibilities here. If you're going to glue stuff together, it would be pretty cool to do thin layers, you know, glue up a piece of plywood. It'd be cool to do thin layers of contrasting material, cherry, walnut, maple, cherry, until you get your 2 1/4 inch blank, and then make the box from that. So there's a lot of stuff you could do here with a glue up in order to give this a whole different look than what we have by making it out of one solid piece. But I do, what I do really like is when it's made out of one block and we look at it later, that the continuous grain pattern is a pretty cool feature of starting with one thick chunk. Okay. So it doesn't look like we have any questions, but I'm going to tap dance a little bit because questions always tend to roll in about the time we're done. So a few things in mind, or a few things coming up here. Don't forget that that Ultimate Guide to Wood Species is available for you. Very, very, very comprehensive information about a number of different species of commonly used woods, which is like their characteristics, and that's going to help you choose the right wood for your best project or for your next project. There's a bunch of information in there about plywood and how it's graded, A, B, C, D, what does all that mean? And then there's a bunch of information about hardwoods being graded. This I had mentioned earlier, first and second, select and better, number one common, what that's all about. This is a very comprehensive guide. And if you're doing woodworking and you're using wood, which makes some sense, having this guide is going to be very important to help you use the right material for what you're trying to do. And the other thing too is make you a more educated consumer. You know, you want to be able to walk the walk, talk the talk when you go to a hardwood supplier and be able to say, well, I need select and better for this project because. So have a look at that wood guide. If I forget to mention it before we get out of here, have a great Thanksgiving. That's a week from today. And hopefully you'll enjoy that with whomever you're enjoying Thanksgiving with, wherever you are. And Alicia Albertson was here. Pneumatic Attic was here just last week. We shot a boatload of video with her. She did such a great job. So watch for her videos to be edited and ready on WWGOA.com in the fairly near future. She really produced some good stuff for us. I want to point out a video that we shot a little while ago. Jimmy DeResta was here, and he and I did a really fun project, which was make a knife from a table saw blade. So it's a question we've had a number of times, like, once I can't sharpen a table saw blade anymore, what do I do with it? And this is one of the answers, is we show you how you can cut a blank from your old table saw blade plate and make it into a knife. And it was very fun working with Jimmy here. There was a little banter back and forth, a little competitiveness. That video is out now. So look for that knife making video. It was very fun to do, and I think you'll enjoy watching it. Okay. So one question is, can we split the difference for cutoff of the lid overage to help with grain matching in highly figured wood pieces? Yeah, so I think the question is, I took everything off of one edge. So this is a good point. If I think I cut off like 1/4 of an inch or so. So if you have to take off 1/4, what you could do is take 1/8 off each edge. That's going to keep you closer to grain match, grain alignment. So that's a good point. Leonard says, Max is who's bringing the questions forward. Why not use a contrasting plug dowel? That would work. And then similarly, Neil says, why don't you use a blind brass pin instead of a screw? Sure. Beauty of woodworking, there's like 11 billion different ways to skin the cat. So if you want to skin this cat with a walnut dowel in this maple would be cool. A brass pin that's blind, in other words, it's drilled into the bottom of the top, but it doesn't go through. That would be cool. One of the things I like about the screw is these are held together. That lid can't fall off. If you could glue a dowel or a pin into the lid or into the base, but you can't glue it into the opposing piece because it won't pivot. So those are both great solutions, and you go and make your own adaptations. The other thing that's cool is I know you could do is give this a little bit of design thought. We're making a rectangle. You could cut this as a rectangle because it needs to be lineal in order to do it, or linear in order to do it on the table saw. But after the work is done, you could shape this. And this could turn into an oval, or you could round the corners more aggressively or whatever. Think about your wall thickness if you're going to do a lot of shaping on the outside after the fact. But this could become an oval or something else when you're done. And that would give it an even more unique flavor. Bob says, I find the screw heads unsightly. Could something cover it? Yep, same answer. You could, I don't know if you could get a plug in there because the lid is only 3/8 thick. So you probably couldn't counterbore deep enough to get a plug in there. But yeah, you could figure that out for your project. A little, you just can't fasten it. In other words, you can't put something in there that'll prevent the pivoting. So you could attach it to the lid. You can't attach it to the screw. But it's, again, lots of ways to skin the cat here. So change the project as you will. I think it's something that if you're setting up to make this, it goes really, really fast. If I'm not, we did this live in a half hour. If I was just making this and not explaining it to you, it takes like 10 minutes to cut these parts. So you can make a bunch of these as Christmas gifts in an uber short amount of time and really kick them out. All right, looks like we are caught up on questions. Bueller, little pop culture there, not everybody will get it. Okay, so I'm just going to say one more time that the guide to wood species is available. I'm basically just tap dancing, seeing if questions come up. Guide to wood species is available, and you should download it. And I'm watching the computer for questions. All right, Max, I guess we're done. So that's the guarantee that 3 more questions will come in as soon as we close. But what can we do? And like I said, have a great Thanksgiving next week. Oh, wait, see, there it is. Difference between white glue and yellow glue. When should I use each? Yes. So as a rule, white glue, which is not what I actually have here. This is a glue that's white, but it's not white glue. White glue has a slower tack time than yellow glue. and when it dries, it's more rubbery. So white glue is not a good choice in a spot where, like, a cutting board would be a bad choice, because we have a seam and a seam and a seam and a seam and a seam. And the glue line from white glue is rubbery, not hard. Yellow glue gets hard. So yellow glue will stand out better. If you need more open time, that's the big benefit to white glue, is it provides more open time for you to get your parts together. This particular glue that is white is, it's got the opposite characteristic. This is Titebond's speed set, and it cures really, really, really fast. So part of the reason I'm using it on this project is it's an easy assembly. All we're doing is 4 corners, then we're gluing on the bottom. And because I can't do the next step, you know, I can't sand the core of the box flat until the corners are dry. This speed set is a great choice because it gets me to the cure time faster, so I can get to that next step faster. Okay. All right, I'm going to try again, Max. Have a great Thanksgiving, and shut her down, Max. See you folks next time.